A couple of months ago, when I realized we were mere months away from the release of Tears of the Kingdom, I decided to finally sit down and finish my Breath of the Wild playthrough that I'd put on hold for years. And I ended up loving it the whole way through. But since it'd been 5 years since I first touched the game, I was now a lot more interested in graphic design and learning about its use in games. So with my return to the game came a new opportunity to look at the graphic design, user interface, and menus in the game. And needless to say, the whole package is great. The one word that I think I and many others attribute to this game's graphic design style is clean, which is a feat in itself, as huge open-world RPGs are cursed with needing to display a ton of information to the players. Health, stamina, mana, experience points, inventory information, enemy health bars, the minimap, quest, the time of day, cooldowns, and controls are all important bits of information that the player needs to know, right? Well, this leads to their heads-up displays, the graphic elements that are overlaid on top of the gameplay, to look and feel messy and claustrophobic. So how does Breath of the Wild fix this? Well, fix is a strong word. It obviously still shows quite a considerable bit of information on screen at all times. The health bar is permanently displayed on the screen, but it's as minimalist as it can be while keeping the signature Zelda red and yellow heart shades. There's no bevel like in Skyward Sword. The designers stopped trying to make the hearts look three-dimensional here. They are a simple red color, making them modern and clean. Additionally, Breath of the Wild also keeps what I'll call the D-pad selector preview on screen at all times. The little graphic which tells you what D-pad button to press in order to open which quick menu, which allow Link to switch weapons, shield, runes, bows, and arrows, without having to open the main inventory menu. Small and out of the way, which is great. Below that still are the champion powers that change to a red hollowed out version, which slowly fills back up when on cooldown. The game also displays a lot of information in the bottom right, including the Sheikah sensor and the sound meter, two pieces of UI that help in visually conveying information that would otherwise rely on sound, making them a great accessibility feature for those who are hard of hearing, as well as the temperature meter, a small, easy to understand graphic that displays Link's temperature, which helps to tell if he's about to start freezing or burning to death, and the time and weather display, which displays exactly what you'd think it does. Finally, we have the minimap, which I'll cover later alongside the main map, and that's all. The designers did a great job filtering and picking the information which would be the most important to display on screen at all times. But even then, if this still feels like a lot to you, you can always go to the options and set your heads-up display to Pro, leaving you with only Link's hearts on screen. This is probably some people's preferred opinion, which honestly, if you prefer being more immersed in the world while dealing with the slight inconveniences through the menus, then fuck yeah, go off. On top of its simple style of flat colors and rounded shapes, Breath of the Wild also heavily benefits from what is known as conditional UI. Put simply, conditional UI elements are elements of the user interface that are set to only appear under certain conditions. For example, the stamina wheel only shows up when Link is actively using up his stamina. It is on a need-to-know basis with the player, where it only appears when the information is pertinent enough for the player who is already looking at Link to be like, oh shit, right, I have to worry about this. There is never a moment when you're doing something that requires stamina where it isn't on screen. But on the other hand, whenever you're doing something that doesn't use stamina at all, it's gone, out of your way. Afterthoughts has a great 20-minute video on just the amazing design of this stamina wheel. So if that's something you want to learn more about, go give it a watch. This principle of conditional UI is used in a lot of games nowadays, but Breath of the Wild in particular uses it fucking everywhere. To the point where I'm not going to be able to cover all of its uses in this video, but I'll certainly try. Your number of rupees only shows up on screen when the number changes or is about to change, meaning whenever you pick up some or find some on the rocks, the counter appears for just a few seconds, and when you're shopping for some butter, it lets you know how broke you are. When you stand next to almost anything or anyone that you can interact with, a neat little button prompt will appear to show you which button to press, what it'll do, and which face button of the four is the right one to press. Great for more casual players who struggle remembering which button is actually which. When you pick up a bomb, ride a horse, or do anything that changes Link's active move pool, additional control prompts will appear at the bottom of the screen, letting you know what new options you've unlocked. This is something that I have seen skyrocket in popularity since Breath of the Wild, but I'm personally not the biggest fan of the way it looks, as sometimes it just looks like one big shopping list of things you can do at the bottom. When you pick up any item from off the floor to send it to your inventory, a little pop-up will appear letting you know exactly what it is you've picked up with the corresponding icon. This one is really nice, but it's also out of the way and quiet, unlike games like in Xenoblade 3 for example, where the item preview is right next to the character and pretty loud. When Link stands next to someone, an arrow appears above their head, allowing you to see their name. Fucking neat, I guess. This arrow changes to the targeting arrow if you hold down Z. Also, some NPCs have text bubbles above their heads only when they are on screen. When the game has something to tell you, it'll have a little pop-up near the top of the screen, which may seem like a random-ish position, but it's meant to be in that in-between area where it doesn't interfere with combat while still being easy to read in a pinch. I think that's most of them. I definitely missed some, so if you've spotted some of these UI elements that you think are worth pointing out, let me know. But we haven't even started talking about the menus. Breath of the Wild's menus are divided into 3 different overarching menus. They are what I'll call the title menu, the main menu, and the Sheikah Slate menu. The title screen menu is where and I think many of you will, think the design of the menu just falls a little flat. Title screens can mean so much to so many people for so many games. From Ocarina of Time's atmosphere, to Xenoblade's music and emotion, to the immediate burst of energy that is every single Mario title screen.
Mario! Super Mario 3D World!
We have all of these emotions and memories attached to launching games. For some of us, it's probably the main thing we think of when we picture a certain game, but for Breath of the Wild, we get a slideshow of key art and silence. And it's honestly a shame considering the amount of impact and impressions this game had on people's lives. Yet the first thing you see when you enter the game is somehow the most disappointing. But hey, it's pretty, I guess. The main menu itself is very simple in design. It's separated into 3 main tabs: the inventory, the adventure log, and the system settings. Unlike what we'll see in the Sheikah Slate menu, this menu is not designed with the intent of being diegetic, meaning that what we see here is not at all what Link can see. This menu is composed of a lot of shades of black and white, with the darker colors composing the boxes in the background, and white being used for the text, the icons, and other pertinent symbols. The iconography used for the inventory tabs is frankly some of my personal favorites I've seen in games. They're very clean and sleek, while still feeling super friendly thanks to the rounded edges. Up to this point I failed to bring up the typeface in this game, but now that we're diving deep into the menus, let's talk about it a little bit. The typeface is called FOT Rodin Pro. Breath of the Wild seems to strictly and almost only use an italicized slanted version of the font. The font itself is a pretty lightweight sans serif typeface, but the fact that in-game it's always italicized makes a font which would normally appear mostly passive and still a bit more sleek and movement orientated, which works really nicely. In regards to the adventure log, there isn't too much to talk about, but I'd like to mention that I've never noticed these illustrations on the right up until I was recording footage for the video. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but yeah. There's a Master Sword for the main quest, a Sheikah Slate for the shrine quest, rupees for the side quests, and a Silent Princess for the memories. Oh, the symbolism. If you press minus on your controller, Link takes out his Sheikah Slate. Everything we see here is designed in a diegetic way, so that it's meant to seem like we're seeing what Link sees. That was a sentence. Unfortunately, since the Sheikah Slate is old and corroded, that means we have these molded lumps of literal shit in the corners, which I personally didn't mind until my friend brought up the fact that they look like that. And now I can't unsee it, especially this bit. Ew. Nevertheless, the Sheikah Slate look influences the color palette for these menus, where most text is now light blue and glowing, which helps contrast with the dark blues and browns of the map. The map itself is really nice, looking old in style but modern in its topographic information and detail. I want to make a video at some point talking about world maps in games, because as someone who loves drawing fantasy continent maps, it's super fun to look at all the different stylistic decisions made in different games. And of course we have the runes in the album, which both use a dark blue screen-like background to display their respective look. Personally, I'm a big fan of the use of the Sheikah patterns in this game's graphic designs, from the cryptic alphabet to even the illustrated symbols on the main menu. It all helps promote the game's incredibly strong world building. I'll make a follow-up of this video once I've played Tears of the Kingdom, where I'll compare the differences between the two games' graphic design and UI decisions, but from what we've seen from the 10-minute gameplay demonstration, there are already some notable changes to be seen, predominantly in the game's color palette, for its map and its UI. While the menu design for Breath of the Wild is a little lackluster, the way the UI design feels in gameplay is some of the most refined and polished I've seen in games. Everything feels like an extension of Link and doesn't take away at all from the vast beauty of Hyrule whatsoever. But that's mostly it. Feel free to mention your favorite part of this game's graphic design style below, and also click the YouTube buttons to help a brother out. I'm incredibly excited for Tears of the Kingdom, so I'll definitely stream it once it's out. I usually stream after 8 PM UK time, but for Tears of the Kingdom I'll probably be live all day, so check it out. Alright, take it easy.